welcome to a special edition of the Global Payroll Week podcast, the Payroll Tech Toast. I'm your host, Nancy, and today we're raising a tech toast to the magic behind seamless payroll operations. From system integrations to real-time agility, we're unpacking what truly makes payroll work flawlessly. And I'm thrilled to be joined by one of the sharpest minds in the industry. Let's welcome Felicia Cheek, a true leader and visionary when it comes to global payroll innovation. So grab your favorite brew and let's dive into the strategy, the tech, and the teamwork that makes payroll not just seamless, but truly game-changing. Let's get started.
Hey,
Felicia, you're welcome. We'd like to start with the toast. If you were raising a glass to one unsung hero of payroll technology, who or what would it be?
Okay, so that's it. That's great for Monday morning, right? But one of the things that I would say for payroll technology, the unsung hero is automation. Automation and AI. So automation, and I'm thinking about payroll from way back when, and the automation has made it so much better. But then comes AI. And so AI is taking that automation to a whole new level. And most of the things that we're doing now are, they're just going to be amplified as we move more into agentic AI in the next few years, and probably a few months for some of us. But AI has definitely been the silent hero, so to speak. And what I like about it, not only the potential that we have throughout the payroll process, but the fact that payroll leaders are now have more time to work on those value added activities that really matter toward the broader organization.
Lovely. You've witnessed payroll evolve drastically over the last 3 decades, from spreadsheets to cloud platforms. So, in your view, what's been the most transformative shift in how payroll systems connect with enterprise technology?
So, if I'm answering the question correctly, if I understand it correctly, it's really the ability and the magnitude of the ability that payroll has in a fully integrated system. And so, when we talk about, what's really transformed the most, what's really made an impact is the ability not to have a lot of different spreadsheets and pieces of paper to put into the input in the payroll process, but to have that information already in the system because it's integrated with an HCM system. So you've got all, a few years ago when we talked about global HCM systems, most organizations did not have them. Now it's like, why don't you have a global HCM? And so the ability to see things in real time and to have that in the system is phenomenal. And not only just that, the manager self-service and the employee self-service, it really requires less and less time. And quite frankly, as automated and integrated as an organization is, payroll, finally is that click of a button. There may be some things that they have to do manually, but for the most part, they are clicking a button because there's real-time calculations or continuous calculations when those things happen in the system automatically. And we are just running through the entire process. So that's what I would say is one of the best things that's happened to payroll in general.
I have a notion for you, which is seamless payroll. Can you share your thoughts on this? Because I honestly believe that it's no longer an aspirational thing, but a foundational in a global context. If you could just elaborate more on this.
Yeah, sure. And that's true. That's true. It's a real life concept that is being process, basically right now. And so I'll take that seamless payroll, meaning, as I talked about before, with an integrated system, you're not having to do a lot of input. The input's already there because it's already in the system at the time that it happens. So that's one thing. And then as far as the seamless integration, when it's time for payroll, there is, we can calculate all of those things that are in there. And it's like we don't have to wait until payday or right before payday to calculate. We can calculate anytime and see where we are. The other thing is the ability to manage payroll by exception. So you don't have to look at every single transaction. You just have to look at those things that really matter. Those are some of the things that I would say with a seamless payroll that, the time that companies spend on the payroll process is significantly reduced because we're really just running the process. And years ago, we were, collating the input. We were collecting the input. We were collating the input. We were entering it in the system. And sometimes there was bad data. We were validating the data, all of those things before we actually process the payroll. So now those things happen automatically. Data validation occurs when the data is entered in the system. And we're just calculating. And as far as the calculation, we don't have to see every single thing. We can really manage by exception. What are those things that we really need to look at? And that's where we focus, not on every single transaction.
How would you define a strategic integration in payroll?
So a strategic integration is one that is that's scalable, transparent to the customer. And when we talk about transparent to the customer, if you're going to different systems, the employee, the payroll administrator, they don't have to sign out and sign back in. Which is what in the past has happened a lot. Do I do it in this system or do I do it in this system? And with a fully integrated or strategically integrated solution, you don't have to think about what system it is. You just think about your process, and the systems talk to each other behind the scenes, and you can access all of the systems in one setting from one, from our perspective, it's from the HCM system. But it's not having to toggle back and forth, not having to think about, do I enter this here or do I enter it there? Do I view this here or do I view it there? So just having that, being transparent to the administrator and to the employee.
How do certified integrations mitigate risk of payroll failures?
Oh, so that's pretty easy, right? And so they have structure. And again, I mentioned before, but the biggest benefit is the scalability, because you're not having to customize the integration for each customer. And with customizations come preferences, right? And so it's all a little bit different, making it hard to support. So let's just say for Oracle and Neeyamo as an example, we know how to support the Oracle Neeyamo integration. You guys know how to support the Neeyamo Oracle integration because it's the same for every single customer. There are checks and balances around it. There is a rigorous process that you've gone through. And anybody can build an interface, but there is so much more. It's more supportable. It's less costly for customers if it's certified and the vendors have worked together. And, the final thing that I'll mention here is there should be no pointing fingers. So we know if it's a Neeyamo issue or if it's an Oracle issue, and we have a relationship and we can talk to each other and resolve the issue, and the customer doesn't have to figure out whose issue it is. Okay, so now I don't need to talk to Neeyamo, I need to talk to Oracle or vice versa. That makes it so worth it to me for the customers to have that one point of contact.
Brilliant, Felicia. Let's talk a little about real time data because We believe that real time data is critical, but in your experience, where is it truly business critical versus, simply nice to have?
Yeah. So let me just say where the real time data is business critical is from a reporting perspective. So when you can prepare your reports in real time, it's absolute beneficial, it's effective, it means the report you're getting is with the current data. And you don't have to wait a few days or whatever to have the most current information. In the process, in the payroll process, real-time data is important when you have entries that are, that originate in HR and they impact payroll. And the two entries that we think about most is when a new employee is hired, we want to make sure that that employee is paid in a timely manner. And also when an employee is terminated, we want to make sure that we don't have overpayments. So we have everything set on the payroll side so that, on the very next payroll, after we've been notified there's a termination, we can make sure that their pay is correct. So those are probably the two biggest transactions because I'm looking at for a new hire. If it takes a long time, then you're having to do off-cycle payments, and that's another cost. For a termination, if you don't get the information in time, there's an overpayment, and those are very challenging to collect. So I would say those are the two biggest ones. And overall, the value for the organization as a whole is reporting. That is the biggest value to real-time data.
Your answer leads me to the next question, which is how can real time visibility into upstream data, like, for example, time, attendance, or even contract changes, enable more proactive payroll governance?
So it's all about real time. That, like I said, in the past, organizations would wait until like a week before pay date. And there were all of these deadlines. There's a time deadline, there's an HR deadline, there's a benefits deadline. And then once you process payroll, there is a payroll deadline, right? And there have been system lockouts. So now that we have all of our data, we've waited for this data, we don't want you to do anything to change that. Now that systems operate in real time, we can calculate payroll at any time. We can see where we are. We can calculate just a gross. We want to see the impact that this has on the payroll or this employee's pay. So you can do that at any time. And as far as the payroll cycle time, because everything is in real time, you don't have to wait until X date to start processing the payroll. You should be continuously processing, and you can identify errors. You can correct those errors before you actually get to the calculation. Lots and lots of benefits in the calculation process from real time. And again, when we talk about the pay cycle and we just talk about the stress of payroll, all of that is significantly reduced. I remember a time where payroll organizations, a lot of them would calculate payroll on Friday and through the weekend because the system, people could not access other parts of the system. And the calculation took a long time. That's no longer the case, at least at Oracle. It's no longer the case at all. We can calculate payroll in real time. And others can use, HR can enter their data for the next payroll and, without interrupting the calculation. So lots and lots of benefits with real-time capability.
What's the operational and compliance impact of shifting from batch based to event driven payroll process?
So again, as I said, I think the biggest thing is you don't have to wait until the end of the payroll process to validate, to correct, and rerun the payroll. It's doing that every single day, every time an entry goes into the system. So from a compliance perspective, and even from an operational perspective, those rules can be configured in the system. So we know what overtime should be. We also know what your business rules are. For example, if you have a new hire employee that's getting a bonus, you may say that, we can't have referral bonuses or, any bonuses for new hires, what I should be saying, over X amount of dollars, over, let's say, $1,000, right? And if it is, at the point you enter it, the system can, correct that. Well, correct it, it brings it to your attention and you can correct it. So all of those checks and balances at the point of entry have such a profound impact on the payroll process as a whole, because most of that has been done already. And that's why when we talk about seamless payroll and when we talk about managing payroll by exception, that's how we can do that, because we are validating compliance operations throughout the entire time.
Let's talk a little about upstream and downstream process orchestration.
Okay.
Upstream payroll data is notoriously fragmented, right? So, how do you think organizations should approach harmonizing inputs?
So, what I would say the best thing that organizations should do is really look at the overall benefits of a fully integrated solution, because that the fragmented data goes away when you have one single solution. Your data is coming from one place, and there is a big strength in the unity of the system. So that is the main thing that I would say that organizations need to really look at. And a lot of times, particularly when payroll is owned by finance, we have to really think about that. Payroll's owned by finance, but they share the system. All of the data that they need is from HR. And so they send data to finance, but they don't necessarily collect data from finance. And so in general, there are some things that they do, but it's not the rule. Really, everything is more about HR. And so I'm saying this to say that I encourage payroll people to be, or payroll leadership to be a part of those conversations. And just because you're a part of finance, or just because even in payroll, you may do things a little bit different and you're under HR, and you want your own solution, I would say that you guys need to really talk about that and try to be a part of those conversations. And as much as you have, or as much as you can, try to have that one unified solution. It creates a force, and it's a force not just for payroll, it's a force for HR, it's a force for benefits, and it's also a force for finance, because the data that they're getting, the costing information, the accounting information is all just a lot more it's a lot more valid, and it's easy to validate it.
Can you walk us through what a truly orchestrated payroll today is like, maybe from data ingestion to statutory reporting?
So so repeat the question. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand it.
Sure. Can you walk us through what a truly orchestrated payroll workflow looks like from data ingestion to statutory reporting?
Yeah, I can. And I wish I could show you I wish I could show you a slide on that. And I don't know, can I show a slide on that?
Yeah, sure, you can. Yeah. While
Okay.
it's showing, you could also explain to us.
Absolutely. And just because it's I just love this, and I happen to have it up while we were talking, because it just helps me think through the payroll process. And this is Oracle's pay cycle overview, which obviously I think is great. And basically what we do is we start with a pre-calculation like everyone else. And when we talk about that one unified solution, everything here, as far as the data preparation, as far as the retro payments, is automated and it's integrated. So you're getting that information from other parts of the system. The next thing is the calculation. And this is really where the beauty, for lack of a better word, happens. This is where you do the calculation, And in our calculations, we also do the costing and we review the results. And a couple of things here. They're really for a modern system. There are no lockouts. People can continue in HR and benefits wherever. They can continue to do their job and access the system. And also having the ability to review the accounting, like the costing here, when we do the calculation before it's actually ready to post to the general ledger, allows the payroll administrator to do any adjustments and everything at the calculation so that when they get to the time of posting, the data is perfect. They already know. And so that's the calculation. Again, that's the main part of the process. And then finally, the post calculation. What happens after the calculation? This is where we distribute any management reports. The pay slips are distributed. The accounting, that's where accounting's actually posted by finance, but we put it in the sub ledger. So it's waiting for finance so they can close as quickly as they need to. And then finally, the legislative reporting, any outbound reporting. I have some examples of a DSN report in France, court orders in the US, or CFDI in Mexico, but all of that happens at the end. And again, one thing that I will say is in this particular process, all of your calculations happen here. After you calculate, there is no additional step to calculate. You should be able to do that all in one process.
That's brilliant.
That's how I would sum it. If I answered your question right, that's how I would show that.
Yes, you did. You did. Where do you see the biggest downstream friction points today?
The biggest downstream friction points would be like, when you don't have an integrated solution, the data, just, how valid is the data? How, do you have any data errors? Is the data correct? So that would be the main thing. And then any validation issues, again, when you're using real time and you have an automated system, all of those things have been taken care of before you actually process the payroll. But maybe there is something missing that is required on the payroll side that doesn't come from HR or anywhere else. You may have some areas there, but for the most part, as long as we're real time and we have our data validations at the point of entry, be it self-service or be it, entered into the system, there should not be a lot of friction points, so to speak. We should have good data.
When managing payroll across various jurisdictions, how do you balance global standardization with hyperlocal compliance nuances?
Yeah. And so local compliance is the most important, right? And so, you're going to generally, and this is how we build Oracle Payroll. We have a global framework, and that global framework is consistent regardless of the country. There are certain things that you have to do in payroll. Regardless of what country you're in. And that's what our global framework is composed of. And then from a local perspective, this is what drives the compliance and the legislation. And I also like to say from a local perspective, this is where organizations have an opportunity to be a little creative in how they present some of the local requirements. And so that is the main thing. And we try to be really, obviously, we're going to comply with local legislation, but we can be creative in how some of the things we do. Like in France, DSN is a big thing, and we have a DSN dashboard, and so from country to country, that's where creativity shows. But it's absolutely localization is the most important thing if you want to be compliant on the local level.
How should organizations design their tech stack to remain audit ready in real time?
So, every single thing that you do should be auditable. So there should be a trail of, who made the what type of transaction it is and who did it and when they did it. and everything's effective dated. And I can only speak for the Oracle system, but everything's effective dated. And, most systems these days are effective dated. So you have that information, but you really have to design the system with audit capabilities in mind. And they don't have to always be, I like to say, above the cover. Some things happen behind the scenes. In fact, most of your audit capabilities are, behind the scenes, but they are happening under the cover. Those should always be automated. And every single thing that you do, every single transaction should be auditable. That's how we have built our system.
Looking ahead in the future, how do you see payroll evolving?
Yeah, and I really think the managing payroll by exception with all the tools that we have with AI capability, with agentic AI that can not only, gather information, but can also do a process. I see us using that a lot more throughout the payroll process and really just managing payroll by exception and really being able to share the value of the data broader for the broader organization. So decision support. If my organization is moving to a new country, I can use my data to determine any information as far as what taxes we're going to have to pay, how much those taxes are in comparison to another location, what the hire rules are, what the reporting is. There's so much that we can do when organizations are moving to new countries, as well as when they're leaving countries. What's the expense? What happens? How long will it take us to scale down and move our business out of this country? So lots of information that we have in payroll. We always talk about overtime and, things that we can see about absences and all of those things. Obviously we do, but we can do even more with the data that we have and the trends that we see and just the compliance knowledge that we have from country to country.
Well, you spoke about AI, but with emerging technologies like low code integrations, blockchain, do you believe, all these will have the most meaningful impact on payroll connectivity in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know a lot about blockchain. I'll be honest about that, but I do see it having an impact in global banking for sure from a financial perspective. And obviously we talked about AI, but integrations, I think that the way that we see integrations, let me go back. I know that the way that we look at integrations today, it will be totally different, probably in 2 to 3 years, because we are looking for that seamless experience. And, a lot of times, particularly in payroll, a lot of times integrations are necessary, but integrations are about more than gathering data and moving it from system A to system B. So that to me is the most exciting thing, of course, besides AI, which, we're already seeing in action, right? But the things that we'll be able to do with integrations with, embedded or iframe, technology are just going to be awesome. They're going to be very, very impactful from a payroll perspective. And a lot of the things that sometimes outside of payroll, leadership doesn't realize that are different, like the employee experience. A lot of that depends on, what system you're using to process payroll. And so when you're using these different systems, you may receive pay slips from a different system. The pay slip, process may vary and so on and so on. But being able to leverage the integration to automate that and have the same user experience regardless of the system, it's going to be powerful, and leadership will start to realize those values when they see the next level of interfaces and what that means.
If you advising a CHRO or a CFO today, what would you say is the hidden ROI of investing in integrated payroll infrastructure?
Yeah, so we do that today, and the hidden ROI is the experience. And the experience is not just about what I see and feel as a user. It's also about the time that it takes. It's also about reconciliation. So as I said before, a lot of C-level leadership don't realize all of the reconciliation that happens in getting the payroll to a third party and also receiving data back from that third party. And the consolidation, the reporting capabilities, the biggest value that I believe CHROs and CFOs will be able to see is from a reporting perspective. They get data in all different languages, they get it in all different currencies, but all of that being able to consolidate that before it gets to them, and also without taking additional time, because it can take a week or so to get reports, and you get reports in different formats from different countries based on the system that they're using. They're going to see that immediately.
Okay. Before we wrap up the session, I do have a few closing thoughts. One would be, with everything you've seen in your 30 plus year journey, what's one truth about payroll that's never changed, and one myth you wish we could finally retire?
Actually, it may be the same thing. The truth is, um, eh, let me see. So repeat the question again. The myth and the truth was,
What's one truth about payroll that's never changed, and one myth you wish we could finally retire?
okay. Okay. So a little bit different. So the truth about payroll is that any organization, and I've worked with lots of organizations throughout my career, anywhere, the payroll resources are really committed to their job, and they are committed to paying employees in an accurate and timely managed. And that commitment is just it's based on, they're driven by the human factor, and it's phenomenal. It is, the things that the payroll organization does to get people paid is incredible. The myth is that it's payroll, it's gross to net. How hard can it really be? And the reason that I originally said that this statement might be the same, because it is gross to net. How hard can it be? When we talk about seamless payroll, we talk about managing by exception. We're almost to that point where it really is gross to net, and it really is pushing a button. But how hard can it be? We will get to a point where we're sharing the data, we're sharing all the information that we have, and the value of payroll is just apparent to every organization. But just to clarify that a little bit, the myth is, it's payroll, it's gross and net. How hard can it be?
That was nice. What is that one word you would describe about the future of payroll? Just one word.
Yeah, I think it is, and I'm getting to the one word. Um, it's exciting. It's exciting. I mean, it is exciting, and technology, well, the one word is exciting. And we haven't had as much change as we've had in the last couple of years. And it's just going to get better and better and faster and faster.
Brilliant. That's lovely, Felicia. And that wraps up today's exploration of what truly makes payroll seamless, where people, processes, and technology work together without missing a beat. From system integration to real time responsiveness, we've seen how payroll can shift from being a background function to a powerful driver of trust, efficiency, and transformation. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of connected, intelligent payroll operations. Until next time, stay connected, stay innovative, and keep making payroll the strategic engine it's meant to be. This is Nancy signing off from the Payroll Tech Toast, where tech meets payroll one episode at a time. Thank you so much for your time, Felicia. Once again, wishing you a happy Global Payroll Week. It was lovely chatting with you. I'm looking forward for more such future conversations.
Great. Thank you so much. I enjoyed today.
Thank you, Felicia. Have a nice day. See you.
Thanks, Nancy.